And Ali, I told you about a certain student, that is Joyce Nyawera from, she's a student from the M-Pesa Foundation, and she had some tough question for President Uhuru Kenyatta. Let's listen in to what her question was exactly.
Yes.
By 2022, what do you think is going to be something that you're going to say, this is what Uhuru did and we'll never forget?
Wow. I hope many things, but two things in particular. One, that I will have left a united, cohesive society. And two, that we shall have won the war on corruption.
Joyce Nyawera there asking, a question that many people are saying it's tough because there's so many other individuals who failed to ask the same question. In studio, I still have Dismas, Mark, and Wakili Kipchumba. Dismas, it seems the president was caught off guard in a way.
Well, that clip says many things. There are almost all town hall meetings that the president attends. The questions are screened well in advance, and he's got an idea of the questions which are coming. And he has probably gone through the answers with his team of advisors. But for the first time, you're having a young person asking a very genuine question. And for the first time on TV, the president is equally genuine by saying, wow. Because that's not the kind of question you expect from such a young lady. And that young lady, in my view, is the one who deserves the head of state's commendation.
Yes.
And you can see that while the mature Kenyans, while public servants are busy looting, young people are actually worried about their future. They're asking themselves, what legacy is President Kenyatta going to leave us? Because you see there are some political scientists who say that whatever we are doing today, we are doing it insurance for our children and grandchildren. So that young lady is very worried about the political leadership in Kenya. And she's had the guts to ask the president, right on his face, what is the legacy you're going to leave us? And you must commend the president for thinking very quickly on his feet, which is not normal with most presidents. And you see, Kipchumba has been saying that a majority of our leaders are princes, so they never get to think on their own motion. But the president, in a flash of a second, has indicated, I'm going to work on national cohesion and fighting corruption. That's an admission from his office that the Big Four agenda is not going to be a success. It's not going to be achieved in the next 4 years. And the only thing that he can do then is to ensure there is a cohesion and that there is and then kills corruption. Now, if the president is able to kill corruption, then the Big Four is going to be a byproduct of killing corruption. Because you've got a full ministry, for instance, for agriculture. What is that ministry supposed to be doing if not ensuring food security in Kenya? You've got a department responsible for housing. What is the department supposed to be doing if not ensuring that there is housing security in Kenya? But the reason why all these people do not perform is because public servants, for some reason, they don't have performance indicators, or they engage in looting. They steal a lot of resources. So when that happens, it means that you can't have a nation making progress. And in my view, what the president needs to do, therefore, is ensure that all public servants have got key performance indicators. Like, for instance, when you look at the entire cabinet today, do we know what every cabinet minister is supposed to be achieving? Do we know what the principal secretaries are supposed to be achieving? Even, actually, maybe we set that one aside. Does the cabinet know what the Big Four agenda is? If you get a cabinet minister today, you ask him, the president is talking about the Big Four agenda. Can you mention those Big Four? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a very high probability that are maybe 20% of the cabinet ministers will actually know what the Big Four agenda is. I don't want to talk about the members of the National Assembly and the Senate, because they're the ones who are supposed to ensure the president has got resources. That's number one. Then number two, the president needs to realize that your legacy, you do not control what people will think about you when you leave office. It's unpredictable, it's unstructured, and it's the people's collective thinking. Like, for instance, there are some people in America who think Barack Obama was a very good president because, he's the first black American, or rather Kenyan American, and the others who think that is a complete waste of time. So instead of the president being worried of what will Kenya think about him, what his legacy is going to be, let him identify our national interest, national aspirations, and step on the accelerator. If it's about killing corruption, let him kill corruption. It's, if it's about working on national cohesion, let him stay focused. When he leaves office, then historians will look at his action, that's Nyawera will look at his action, and then they'll form a view. Because we don't want a president to be taking decisions informed by opinion polls or the popular expectation of people. Because he's a leader, he's been given a mandate.
Well said, Dismas. And Mark, speaking about Nyawera's question there, there's so many people who couldn't have the guts, you know, to ask the question, the similar question, right?
Yeah, there's so many people, specifically about 300 of them in Parliament and about 60 of them in Senate, who, by the way, Nyawera, congratulations for having more courage than someone who has a bodyguard, parliamentary immunity on whatever they say on the floor of the House, and the best they can ever get to courage is saying, I will come next week, I will name the cartels and not do a thing. That is the issue with this country. That in this country, a 19, 18, 17-year-old has more courage than 340-something members of Parliament and Senate, let me not use the word I wanted to use, who do not have the courage to ask the president what he is going to do for this country for over the next 4 years. That is the problem with our nation. You have, listen, let me explain to Kenyans slowly. When you go to Parliament, when you are on the floor of Parliament, if I say Yusuf Ibrahim is a fool, Yusuf cannot take me to court. I have immunity in Parliament. We use that time in Parliament to talk about salaries, to talk about succession, and to question whether it is okay for a lady parliamentarian to show her arms or not. That's what we use Parliament for. This young lady had 2 minutes, 3 minutes at most, and she asked the most significant question of our time. What is the collective of IQ of Parliament doing? How many parliamentarians even know what cohesion is for this country? How many of them have discussed how to coalesce this country? How many members of Jubilee Party in Parliament and in Senate are together with the president in fighting against corruption? How many of them today are facing cases in court because they are the perpetrators of corruption? How many of them today are their wives and sisters and brothers and whoever in court today because of corruption? So my question to my country is this. Why are we surprised that someone could ask the president what his legacy is? What other question is there to ask a president? Number two, why is the president saying, wow? That should be something he wakes up every day and he knows to answer. That tells me that the president has surrounded himself with the most dangerous people. The people who believe their own PR and believe their own hype. That they never look at the emperor and tell the emperor that, listen, you are showing a little bit more skin than you should. That they don't tell the emperor that, listen, whatever plans you are putting is not affecting Wanjiku correctly. That don't tell the emperor, listen, that we've borrowed so much now that the IMF is giving us dangerous signs. Mr. President, get rid of those peoples and get 10 Nyaweras on your side who will wake up every day and ask you, this fight against corruption, how far has it gone? Is it successful? Is the policeman on the road still taking money? Is the chief still holding IDs waiting for 50 shillings? Those are the answers you need, Mr. President. Those are the questions that you need. Any person who's making you comfortable is digging your grave. The people who ask you hard questions and make you uncomfortable, those you should embrace, those you should bring close, because they will guarantee you a legacy. And my final word to you, Mr. President, you will retire when you're under 60 years of age. We will have between 30 and 40 years either to praise you or to call you a failure. Choose wisely, Mr. President.
I think he has heard your message there. But Kipchumba, as much as we're going to talk about whether the president will go the big four way, because of course that is the agenda of him and by extension his administration, and whether it's going to focus on the two things he mentioned, you know, with regards to the answer to Nyawera. He talked about cohesion and fighting corruption. I mean, is this a question that, you know, people are supposed to ask the question, the president over and over again about his legacy? Do you think this is something that, you know, people surrounding the president should keep on asking and get the right answers also?
I think it is it's purely an empty talk to ask the president what is your legacy or to those discussions. Look at it this way, Yusuf. Everybody must have a legacy. It is not a preserve of a president or a governor. Everybody. But how do we derive your legacy? We cannot, or you cannot tell us what your legacy will be. We tell you. The onus is not on President Uhuru Kenyatta. He might be thinking about it each day, but the people who will correctly tell me what your legacy is us, the people who are outside here. We can now look and tell Kibaki, your legacy was infrastructure. Your legacy was a sound economy. That is us telling Kibaki. And Kibaki did not sit down somewhere and say, I'm crafting my legacy. That is also where the greatest lie is. Why is it wrong to sit down and craft a legacy? It is wrong in the sense that everything you will be doing will be aimed at achieving a legacy instead of doing everything possible to achieve everything better. Look at it this way. When people woke up on the 26th of October to vote for the second time or for the third time for President Uhuru Kenyatta, they were voting on the strength of his manifesto. That is what every Kenyan who voted for Uhuru Kenyatta believes in. Therefore, the issue of whether we should remind Uhuru Kenyatta each day of whether a legacy should live, that is not in us. When we voted for him and he was sworn in at Kasarani, it is in him now. It is ingrained in him as a person, as he walks around, that the conviction he has for us as a country is to achieve A, B, C, D. But again, there is also the wrong kind of advising that at times I think goes around somewhere. If today you tell us we want to see the legacy of the president being the Big Four, the onus is also on you to tell us these are the performance indicators that the Big Four, we will be doing a periodic review of the Big Four in 6 months. These are the timelines. These are what we call the planning indices that we know that from here to here, this ought to have happened. These are the indicators that the people who have been tasked with this function will have done it. But what do we see? We only see a communication part of the Big Four, which means more of it will be on spin as it is in real action. That's the other thing. But for me, from where I sit as a Kenyan, 6 years down the line, there is something that we must give it to the president for having achieved. If you ask me, one of his legacies, which will be consolidated, is on women. He has empowered a lot of women. It is during his tenure that a woman became a general in the military. Several other things. He might not have achieved so far on the 2/3 gender rule, but a lot has been done around there. Secondly, without even having the Big Four, he has achieved a lot in terms of healthcare. There is a lot that has been achieved, the NHIF and everything. That will, when everything is down, we will count healthcare as one of his achievements. And also give it to him. He took office when insecurity was very rampant. He has consolidated his security things. A lot has happened around there. But now you can walk in this town freely because security has been beefed up. But going forward, what I would like to see, I would like to see Uhuru Kenyatta leaving office while one, there is rule of law, not rule by law. Rule of law, whereby if today, Yusuf, you are arrested, you know that due process will take care of your interests. The other thing that is supposed to live in this country is he should live behind a country where we have social equity, where we do not have 100 people eating in 5-star hotels and another 50 million looking for food from all these NGOs. That, for me, will be great.
I'm sure that those who will disagree with you in a way, because at the moment, there are about 2-3 million Kenyans who are still facing starvation, for example, when it comes to food security.
But that is what you should work on, because we cannot be selling a country where people cannot afford even water.
We'll continue with this discussion, but I see Mark wants to bite into it as well. I'll come to you. But Dismas, now that everybody is talking about the Big Four agenda, the president, while answering the little Nyawera, he talked about, cohesion and fighting corruption. There are people who believe, he should at least even put the Big Four agenda aside and, declare total war on corruption. And that, there are people who believe should be his legacy. What do you have to say about that?
Well, several things. Number one, Kipchumba and Mark have spoken that the president may be receiving wrong advice, suggesting that he's got wrong advisors. But at the end of the day, advisors all over the world suffer no risk. The buck stops with the president. The president has no obligation to implement bad advice. I do advisory work for a living, and when I advise the client, I wash my hands like Pontius Pilate and I take a step back. It's up to the client. If the advice doesn't make sense, he ignores it. If it makes sense, he takes credit. So if the president is doing something based on the advice he's received, it's not sufficient to say that the president receives bad advice. No, the buck stops with him. Because Kenyans did not vote for advisors. Kenyans voted for the president. So if you're receiving bad advice, kick them out. There is no way the president is going to run away from the Big Four agenda. He's already identified it. But the priority should be fighting corruption. Because if he kills corruption in Kenya, then the Big Four is going to be a byproduct of killing corruption. For instance, last week we discussed about food insecurity. He's spending so much time on Kiunjuri and maize and sugarcane and stuff like that. If Kiunjuri had the Ministry of Agriculture up and running with clear performance indicators, then you would achieve one of the targets of the Big Four. It would be very interesting to establish what does Kiunjuri present at the cabinet when he's meeting with his colleagues at the cabinet. What does he talk about his successes, his key deliverables? Is he a happy man when 3 million Kenyans sleep on an empty stomachs and yet he's the minister who is responsible? Those are the key things. And I'm not aware whether the public servants today actually have got performance indicators. You form the impression that they wake up early in the morning, they go to work, maybe they go through the newspapers, crossword, cut deals, and go home without serious performance indicators.
Yes, we're going to discuss this in detail, but I understand we have some breaking news coming out of Migori at this hour. And Migori woman representative, that is Pamela Odhiambo, has survived a grisly road accident this morning, but her bodyguard, that is Fred Owich, died at the scene. The accident took place at Winyo on Drongo, Homa Bay Road at about 8 a.m. this morning. Dr. Odhiambo was heading to Homa Bay to join Baringo Senator Gideon Moi, who has held public functions in the county for the past 2 days. Migori County Police boss, that is Mr. Joseph Ndenge, said the driver of the Isuzu double cabin vehicle, Mr. David Ouma, had tried to avoid hitting a motorcycle rider when he lost control. Sorry, the vehicle rolled several times, according to eyewitnesses. The woman representative and 2 other occupants sustained chest injuries and were taken to Kisumu Hospital. Mr. Ndenge had said at the scene of the accident. Now, the bodyguard's loaded pistol was also recovered from the scene. Once again, let me revisit a breaking story that we've just received is that Migori woman representative Pamela Odhiambo has survived a grisly road accident this morning, but her bodyguard, Fred Owich, died at the scene. The accident took place at Winyo on Drongo, Homa Bay Road at about 8 a.m. Dr. Odhiambo was heading to Homa Bay to join Baringo Senator Gideon Moi, who has held public functions in the county for the past 2 days. Migori County Police boss, Mr. Joseph Ndenge, said the driver of the Isuzu double cabin vehicle, Mr. David Ouma, had tried to avoid hitting a motorcycle rider when he lost control. The vehicle rolled several times, and that is the picture from the scene of the accident, even as we try to gather some more information with regards to that breaking news. We have a team of reporters on the ground. At the moment, let's continue with our discussion this morning on the Sunday edition. And I think, Mark Bichachi, you wanted to also bite into that discussion. But even as you talk about President Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy or what his legacy should be, there are people who are talking about the need to reshuffle the cabinet. I mean, is it something that you think should be a solution to all this?
First, of course, my condolences to the life that has been lost and wish the women rep a quick recovery. Now, back to Uhuru Kenyatta and his cabinet. First, in the abundance of council victories made sure, you cannot say that because I have the best striker, then my team is okay. That does not work. The guy who is in the back benches of any team also plays a key role, and that is why Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta has to sit down and really consider who are his star players. Number one, in terms of his cabinet, those are his strikers, those are his defenders. And to be honest with you, I cannot remember any time where any Kenyan stood up and said that the cabinet has done a stellar job, other than Matiang'i when he was in education, where he dealt with the cartels in exams. Now we've got a minister of education who thinks it's a brilliant idea to print papers, exam papers from the United Kingdom. As in, surely, as in, if we can transport 3 billion shillings on Kenyan roads, which is actual currency, exam papers have to be imported from the UK. This is insanity. What happened to the printers on River Road? Don't they deserve to get money to print these papers?
Exam leakage, I think that's what they are afraid
No, but so you can't prevent an exam leakage unless you take it to the United Kingdom, surely. Are we a banana republic? Are we a bunch of monkeys who cannot screw on a light bulb correctly? This is the problem. So we have a cabinet, definitely, that you as a president have to sit down publicly and call out your cabinet secretary. Let me tell you, if I called out my staff in my office in public, they would not have their job by the time I was done with that statement. And you are not just the head of state, you are the commander-in-chief. Please act like it. So this idea that the president is nice outside of his team, let me just be very categorical. His advisors, his inner circle of friends, plus his cabinet, if they are not competent, make no mistake, Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy will equally be incompetent. That's how it works. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, even if I was your best friend and I am letting you down in any docket, fire me. That's where we should be in this country. This thing where some people are unfireable because you owe them political favors. What are political favors? How is a political favor more important than that child who's dying of malnutrition? How is Kwashoko and marasmus an issue in 2018 Kenya? It is because of the Ministry of Agriculture. It is because of the incompetence that has been practiced there, not just by Kiunjuri, but also by his predecessor and PSS. So if the president is going to have any semblance of a legacy, he needs to get serious. And let's be very clear. There's something Kipchumba said that is true. That a legacy is not just what you've done. It is also how you're perceived. Now, that perception, the amount of kilometers that have been built, the amount of changes in our financial sector, all of those things will be wiped away if you continue dancing with clowns. All we will remember is you are a joke.
Let me finish with Kipchumba before we take a break. Clearly, like both Dismas and Mark have had a lot to say with regards to, President Uhuru Kenyatta's performance. And this article says that the president is furious and disappointed with some of the members of his cabinet. Do you think being angry alone is enough?
Yusuf, we don't need that article to know. We have seen him speaking in his vernacular language in a national event. You do not need that. We just need to be sitting somewhere and see the news. And we are lucky we are living in the 21st century where when something happens, we receive it in real time. But I think we are missing the point, and we are missing it with a large gap. In that we do not need, or we do not need even for a moment, to see a president mad because of a cabinet. It is not supposed to be the case, because these are people. He has a prerogative, a constitutional prerogative, to appoint the people he deems fit to serve his cabinet, the people he deems fit to advise him. My question that I've always asked myself, if the president is mad at these cabinet ministers in public, what transpires at the cabinet level in that room? If he's mad, this mad, in public, where cameras and international media is, what transpires back in the state of when they have a meeting? But it's good, because if the president can be mad at them, it means the president feels the frustrations that normal Kenyans go through. But just being mad is not enough. We need to see action. I remember there was a time the former president, Daniel Arap Moi, he told Saitoti that politics and friendship are two different subjects. I think the same should now down in our president, that maybe there are people who are in his cabinet who are his friends. Kicking them out will make the friendship better, because they'll appreciate him more. And then the other thing is this. I think we have developed a nation whereby somebody is sworn in as a cabinet secretary, they do not go home and read whatever they signed properly. And I invite them to go home today and read it afresh. The oath they took. They executed an oath saying that I will bear true to the president. I'll advise him counsel at all time to the ability of my knowledge. Whatever is happening now, I don't think if that is the ability of the knowledge of our cabinet secretary. Secondly, when you have people who are doing whatever is happening, like creating nudes, doing what, and they are sitting in your cabinet, what do they serve? You have people who have corruption, but they are entrenching impunity. What do they serve?
So you're saying heads should be rolling, basically. Many things skip.
Just in the 1980s, in 4 years, Thomas Sankara planted 10 million trees, immunized 4 million Bukinabe, and totally changed the country in just 4 years. What excuse does Uhuru Kenyatta have in 2018 when he enjoys a peaceful country, he has all kind of state power, he has the support of the public to run any of these programs? If he fails, he should know the failure will stop and rest at his feet.
And Thomas Sankara has always advised against, African countries gaining access to loans and credits from especially international bodies. And that brings us to the end of the second part of this program. But as we continue with the Sunday edition, we're going to tell you more about the International Monetary Fund, that is IMF. They have raised some sort of red flag with regards to Kenya's economy. We're going to tell you that and much more, even as we keep a keen eye on that breaking news that we had earlier for you with regards to Migori woman representative Pamela Odhiambo, who got involved in a road accident. She survived the accident this morning, but her bodyguard, Fred Owich, died.